So welcome back. The engine's been out of the car for about a week now, and for those of you watching the videos, you'll know we've got a problem with low compression on this left hand bank of cylinders along here. So I took the cylinder heads and valve covers off this side, which is major engine works, because I don't know if you can see here, but it involved taking the cam and the cam chain off. That means all the timing is gone on that side of the engine, so it is a major undertaking to make sure you get that back correctly. That is one of the skillful jobs, yeah. And for those of you who've been following it, the last guy who had this engine out the car didn't put it back quite right, and if you look on this barrel here, the cylinder head gasket had not been installed correctly, and this lip is all crushed down, so the ring must have come out here and it crushed that metal, and it similarly crushed it on the head as well. I hope you can see that. I'm going to try and zoom in a bit for you, see if you can see it better. There, look, you can see that. It's a sorry state, isn't it? So I've spoken to one or two Porsche specialists, not the dealers but the specialist marketplace about that, and they said generally the barrels and pistons are sold in sets of 6, and so that's a £2,000 to £3,000 job to repair that, and you've got to take all the pistons out and renew them. Well, I don't really need that. I want one barrel to put on there, and they said probably it's going to be best to file that down with a grindstone, try and repair it, if necessary a dabble weld, and you know, in other words, make it work on that one barrel. So I'm going to try and do that, or rather the machine shop is going to try and do that. And also, while the heads were away, one of the valve guides was all splayed and broken at the end, and I phoned them up and they said that is called mushrooming of the valve guide, and what it means is the valves and the guides were so worn that they were slapping about a little bit, and that applies the pressure to the guide, and being made of brass it eventually cracks. They said the bad news is that we then looked at the 5 other valves that are along this side, and they're all pretty much equally worn. So one has broken, the other 5 are in danger of wearing, and so that made me think, okay, it's time to bite the bullet. So now I'm going to take the cam and the cylinder heads off the other side, and I'm going to send all 6 off for new valves and new valve guides, and that is called a head job on an engine. Yeah, so we're going to have a renewed, rebuilt cylinder head on both sides of the engine. Then we're going to put it back together, and while I'm doing that, I thought I would clean the engine up, so I've started doing that. It's a terrible long-winded job. The aluminium is no longer silver in certain places. Yeah, I'm wondering, is this magnesium or is it aluminium? Maybe one of you guys out there can tell me. I also thought, because the 2.7 has a red engine shroud, that I would buy one of those. So there you go, look, I bought that second hand, and when the fan is back on there, that will look a little bit more like a 2.7 RS engine, won't it? And this was a really good buy. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, other than it has seen 40 years of service. I'm going to clean it up a little bit more, make it look as good as it can, and that cost me £10. So I'm pretty pleased with that, because they are more or less as rare as hen's teeth. So I'm going to carry on disassembling this engine. Carrying on the disassembly, I've undone all the nuts around the cam chain cover, which is this piece, taking it off, and there was a gasket on there which I'm going to replace, and inside you can see this is the end of the camshaft. This is the camshaft nut and the sprocket. It goes off down there to the crankshaft sprocket. That's a guide, plastic guide there, and this is the tensioner, and you remove that by undoing this one nut here, and then that whole thing comes out, and at that point I'll be very likely to lose the cam timing. So you've got 2 options. One is set it up again from first principles, or secondly you can mark the camshaft and the sprocket, the position of everything. I think you can, and then you can put it back exactly as it was, so the tension is kept by this straight side and any slack is taken up by this, so this part of it doesn't matter. So the position of that chain on that sprocket relative to that camshaft and the nut, if all put back and marked exactly, then the timing is going to be correct. And actually, even though people will tell you differently, if that is right within even one degree, it's going to be absolutely fine. But that's my opinion. Now the next job to do is the hardest job of all. It's getting the massive 32mm nut off the end of the camshaft, and for that you're going to need to buy a special Porsche tool. So first, a little bit of sustenance. That's one thing the British do best, yeah? Right, now I'm going to show you how to get that nut off without the special Porsche tool. Okay, so this is the job that you're faced with. Here is the chain tensioner. Here's the big 32mm nut, and in the middle, look, there is a sort of a flat-sided piece, and what you're supposed to do is to hold that with one part of the special tool whilst undoing this very tight large nut with the other part of the special tool, and it is like a socket with a slot cut in it, so you can get another tool up to hold on those flats. So that's quite difficult, so I've taken a different approach, and I hope you can see it. What I've done here, look, is I've put the chuck key from my electric drill through that sprocket, and I know that's the right side, so that when I try and untighten that nut, it pushes that down against the piece of metal and holds it nice and firm. So that is it held firm. That's the same as holding on the flats of that camshaft there. Now I've got the 32mm socket. You can see it there. It's quite a big thing. And that fits nicely and snugly on there. But even though that is a nice big wrench, look at it, I was unable to turn it. It's so tight, yeah? And also I was frightened that I would lift the whole engine off the workbench, just sort of tilt it off there because I had my whole weight on that pry bar. So what I did was I got the Pengilly special tool, and I'm going to show it to you now. This is a Dave and Dave restoration special. I hope you can see it. This, look, is a 4-foot long scaffold pole. When I put that on the end of the wrench like that, there is no nut this side of a large steam engine that I can't undo. And believe me when I say I have just pushed that down like that. You see how I could tilt that off the workbench? Oh my words! Success! And that is that nut undone. So that the £120 special tool replaced by the trusty scaffold pole.